anymore.
It sounds all right. Right, we're going to start.
Yeah.
Hello, dear listener, dear viewer. Welcome to Random Access Memories, hosted by me, Ian Lee. It's the show where I invite a guest on every so often, and they bring a retro game of their choosing. Now, today I'm joined by, he's gone straight in with the game. Dave's dived in with Dungeon Master. I've not even introduced him. Dave, is your last name really Velociraptor? Because that's how I know you.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
No, it's not.
Love to the Mr. and Mrs. Velociraptor. I know you from This Week in Retro podcast, hosted by the mighty Neil, who is boundless in his energy. And I have recently gone back and listened to every episode, which perhaps sounds a little bit creepy. But what's really interesting is you weren't there for the start, but
No.
quite early on, they go, okay, we've got a comment from Dave Velociraptor, and you kind of would pop up. When did you, I don't really know, when did you get fully involved with the podcast, This Week in Retro?
So I knew Neil the entire time. When Neil talked about doing the podcast, starting the podcast with Boat, I already listened to Boat's podcast because Boat does Amigos Retro Gaming. And I already knew Neil very well because Neil does his channel RMC Retro, part of Retro Collective. So I knew both halves of it. So I was quite excited by it. So I already knew of both when it started.
So you were getting involved. Then how did you go from being a listener to being? I know you went on as a God. I know too much. You went on as a guest, I think, early on.
Yes.
And then how did that become the full-time gig?
So I went on as a guest, which had been something that Neil and I had said for a while. And I had helped Neil before on various voice different things with RMC. I came on as a guest, and then it seemed to go well. It was an episode with trumpets. And it seemed to go very well. And then before I knew it, I was on as a host, along with Chris, who joined a few weeks before me.
Yep. You ever done any podcasting before that?
No, none at all.
That surprises me because you came in maybe the first one when you were a guest a little bit hesitant because it's weird going on. Well, I've been on a couple of times and it is weird going on someone else's show. It's like going into someone else's house and they have their own rules and you take your shoes off, you know. But very, very quickly, with like the second or third appearance, you totally settled in and sounded very confident.
I guess that's a compliment. I don't know how to take that, but thank you.
Do you? I mean, do you disagree? Do you think it took longer? Do you think you sound confident now?
I don't know. You mentioned it.
Okay,
you've taken the confidence away. It's dissolved. It's melted. It's melted like a snowman.
The next show, it's going to be you all shivery and nervous. I don't mean
to.
No,
I'll have forgotten about that. But then, no, I did settle in. It seemed natural. I really enjoyed doing it. I had listened to every episode before then, though, so I knew what was wanted, and I knew Neil very well, so I was comfortable with him.
You sound great, and whatever combination, Chris was obviously there for a long time, and Bo, and all of these people, the guests that you've had, it's such a lovely podcast. You know, it's so warm, it's so friendly, it doesn't take itself very seriously at all. Although some of Neil's jokes, I mean, geez, he needs new writers, I would suggest, but it's a great listen. And I know it's got a big audience. Is it weird for you knowing that there are a lot of people? I think you just hit 10,000 subs on YouTube, that there are a lot of people watching and listening, and that it's a big deal for a lot of your listeners.
So it is weird because there are, and there have been for some time, about 12,000 people a week listening to it.
Wow.
Between the podcast platforms and YouTube, because we're on YouTube as a show where you can watch us, and Duncan will put in B-roll and things up on the screen, and also on the podcast platforms, and we get over 10,000 a week, and it doesn't seem real.
Yeah,
it just does seem like there's 10,000 people a week listening to it. I mean, you must have some experience of that, 11 o'clock show and all the rest of it. You must have.
Can I tell you, our podcasts don't get nowhere near that at all. It's significantly less. It is weird, you know. I did The Jungle and it got 15 million views, and that's such a big number that I can't comprehend. I can't understand what that means. I'm, 25 years, 11 o'clock show started in 98, so 26 years, 7 years. I still am amazed that people want to support me on Patreon or download a podcast or go and listen to something. I think it's a great privilege to have the ears of someone for an hour or for whatever it is.
It's funny because I've always thought that the show this week in retro is much better than the sum of its parts.
Right.
Put a lot of work in. I mean, I do a fair bit of research and preparation for each week, but even still, it comes out as something magical
Yeah.
that seems to be much better than it deserves to be.
Do you do anything else? You don't do any streaming or anything, do
No,
you?
nothing at all. Nothing at
Right.
all. I have entertained the idea of streaming one day, and the main reason is just to keep me honest with playing games,
Right.
to make me play games and make me play them properly and to make me do it. But it's an awful lot of effort to do streaming,
Yeah.
and there are too many people already streaming and too many people who want to be streaming. I'd feel a little bit guilty about pushing someone else out of the way if someone watches me. Plus, why would I think it would be a success anyway?
Well, I guess it's how you define success. If success is right, I want 5,000 people watching and I want to make this
Oh
amount of
no.
money,
Mm,
then that's unlikely to happen. If
yeah.
success is I want to have fun 2 hours a week or whenever playing a game I really like and maybe two people joined me, well,
Mm.
that's achievable and that can be equally as rewarding, I think. Took me a long time to get that actually, but that's where I'm at now.
I think on Twitch, I think you need to have, for it to be a proper stream, you need to have maybe double digits of people watching you.
Okay.
Anything above that is fine. If you get less than that, it's a little bit awkward and you're trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anything above that, and it's fine. And I actually think Twitch is suited for fewer viewers than what you see on the big channels on Twitch. I mean, it's just a wall of
Yeah, it's too
ever
much.
scrolling text, and I'm not so keen on that.
Another reason I like you is because you're a cat man. And you can see, if you're watching, you can see I've got Patty, who's
Hello,
wandering all over.
Patty.
This is Patty. There's a couple of others. There's Big Boy over there. You can't quite see. Now, how many? Oh, look at that. Who's this?
This is Dot.
Hello, Dot. Dot's a girl, I'm assuming.
Yes, she is. She's a Bengal. She's a Bengal cat.
And you've got a second cat, haven't you?
Yes, I've got Johnny. So Johnny is about 9 or 10. He was a feral rescue, and I bought Dot from a semi-professional. Oh, look at her little face. Semi-professional breeder. She is a Bengal cat, but she's not a pedigree. She's not a proper Bengal. She is a Bengal, though. She still climbs and jumps like uncontrollably.
Cats are the best, right? And cat people are the best. All of mine are rescues. Big
Hmm.
Boy was a stray that used to come and terrorize our cats until I caught him. Patty was unfortunately her brother
Patty.
died a little while ago, but she had an accident. I don't know what the accident was, but her pelvis got shattered. This was during
Hmm.
COVID, and we had to took her to the vets, and they said, right, we can put her down, or we can fix her, but it's going to cost you £9,000. And I didn't have £9,000, but I went, fix her. I will find the money somehow. So she's the most expensive cat I've ever owned, and completely ungrateful, Dave. Not
No,
one word of thanks from her. When did you start gaming?
I started gaming as a very small child in St. Anne's, which is near Blackpool.
Okay.
Lytham St Anne's, where we would go on holiday as a family. And at 5 or 6 years old, I would be fascinated, absolutely enthralled by the arcade machines in the hotel we stay in.
Yeah.
For some reason, the hotels there had 5 or 6 arcade machines, and the pier that we would go to every night, which in my mind's eye is an enormous thing, which probably isn't very big. But that's when I started gaming on arcade machines. I absolutely loved arcade machines. I didn't get a micro though until I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
And before then, games for me were role-playing games on pen and paper, and importantly, the novel. Have you heard of fighting fantasy novels?
Oh my God, Ian Livingston and Steve Jackson.
Yes,
But
yes.
Warlock of Firetop Mountain, come
That's
on.
right. Yes, yeah. That was my first real games at home. They're not computer games, but they almost are.
Yeah.
They almost are. Do you know what? Do you know what I mean about that?
I do know what you mean. And you would scum save by putting your finger in the page. Go to page 43. Oh, the orcs have killed you. Well, hang on, let's
Yes,
just go back.
yes, yes, yes. They were fantastic. They were almost like a text adventure, but they had more to them. They had you would write down numbers, you would
Yeah.
roll dice as well, or you would pretend to roll dice and cheat. City of Thieves, all the rest of it. They were fantastic. Forest of Doom.
Years ago, I've been very lucky and I've got to meet a lot of these people. And it was some awards thing I was hosting, and Ian Livingston was either accepting an award or giving an award. And I got to just take him to one side and thank him for those books, and say, and I know he's huge in the gaming world now, but just say how
Mm.
important those books were to me. I remember buying one in Slough when I would have been 7 or 8 years old and rushing home and working through it, that evening. So being able to meet him and say, man, come on, that was great. Thank you so much. That was a real thrill.
He's a nice man as well, from what I see.
Yeah.
He's a nice man. But yeah, huge success. He started Games Workshop,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's Warhammer 40K. I mean, they're absolutely massive. The books that he did with was it Penguin that published them? They must be a tiny part for him. But
Yeah.
I'd imagine he's still warm to them because he's gone back and done more of them recently.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Um, I'm aware that you've brought a game, and we will get to the game in a minute, I promise. However, I can see behind you, and it looks like you're in like an annex or something like that, and you have a huge black shelves set up with massive big box games. I am going to completely guesstimate. What have you got there? 100?
Oh no, there's much more than 100. Um, there are shelves all around me. The shelves
Oh,
right around me. The
wow.
entire room is covered with these shelves, and I have games from my entire micro owning career, if you like. So
Okay.
from the Amstrad CPC, in fact, there might even be a couple from the BBC Micro.
Right.
We borrowed one of those from the school over the summer. BBC Micro, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, and the PC, and a few others that I've dipped into on the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Apple, and so on. Loads and loads of games. I absolutely love holding the big box in your hand. The game starts when you touch the box with these games, whereas these days it starts when you launch the thing in Steam.
So are they primarily PC games behind you?
Oh no, no, there's loads of Atari ST behind me.
Oh, is there? Oh,
So
okay. I'm not
um,
that familiar with the Atari ST boxes.
Atari ST is mostly there,
Okay.
and then that bit there where the Ultimate is and so on, that's mostly PC. There's PC that you can't really see there, PC there,
I
PC
love it.
there, PC there, PC there, and a mix up there.
But do you ever reach behind you and go, right, I'm going to play this one and put it in, or are they for show? How does it work for you?
If I'm going to play a game, then I will get the big box for it
Right.
down. I will get it down, and I will look at it, and I will have the manual in my hand. If there's a cloth map, all the better for folding that out and looking at it. I do touch the boxes. I won't play every game I've got here because there's just not enough time in the world to do it. But I aspire to play all of them, and there's not a game here that I bought that I wouldn't play. There's a possibility I'll play them all.
Fantastic. I noticed you've got Tiberian Sun there, and I was obsessed with that game to the point that when I've got what was 4 or 5 years ago, this was kind of a top of the range PC, right? Because I was going to
Mhm.
be streaming, and I got top of the range. It's probably a little bit out of date now, and I got it all set up, and I was streaming on Twitch to test it all. And the
Mhm.
first game I played was Tiberian Sun,
Mm.
and people in the chat are going, "Ian, you've got like the fastest PC there isn't, and you're playing a game that's 20, that's 20 years old." But that's the way. Do you play modern games?
Uh, yeah, I play. The last game I played was Fallout 4.
Okay.
Um,
So
this
no
morning.
is the answer. Fallout 4
It's,
is that quite old? I can't remember where it is in the series.
it must be almost 10 years old now.
Okay.
So there's nothing again. I don't have anything against playing modern games. However, I do struggle with them because of the lack of respect for your time.
What do you mean by that?
because they fill it out with too many things to do,
Right,
too much combat involved in it. Baldur's Gate 3 is fantastic, but the idea of starting a new playthrough in that is daunting.
right.
I like to play with the difficulty fairly high.
Tough guy. I like
I
it.
don't I don't find if you play these games, particularly role playing games, on lower difficulty, you end up not playing them properly. You can coast through things. You don't have to use the range of abilities that you're given. So I don't tend to enjoy them as much.
Right.
If you play them on hard difficulty, they take too long to play. So
Yeah.
you lose either way. And they're set up these days for saves coming. They're set up these days so that if you lose a fight, you just reload and try again, and then it means that you go into the fight not as prepared, and you're not doing it at your best. You're not pushing yourself to do it that way. Whereas I really enjoy the difficulty of them.
Let us go to your game. You've shown it already. You're wearing
Hmm.
the merch, Dungeon Master. It's a
Hmm.
game I've heard of. I've not played. I don't know very much about it. So, so tell me a little bit about the game.
Sure. So Dungeon Master is a 3D perspective dungeon crawler. So you see what your characters see. There are four of you in this dungeon. You will explore down the different levels to finally fight a dragon and Lord Chaos, unite the fire staff with its gem, and restore balance. It is a wonderful game. It came out in 1987, so it's quite an old game.
Yeah.
And it was a really special game for me. As I mentioned, Fighting Fantasy was my first real games. And then we borrowed the BBC Micro from my mom was a school teacher. So
I
she
was going
borrowed
to
it.
say she must have been a headmistress
Yeah,
or a teacher to get that over the
yeah,
holidays.
yeah. So borrowed it over the holidays to have a go on it. She never bothered. And I played Elite and I played Sim and I played all sorts of things. And the BBC Micro was wonderful. And then for Christmas, my parents must have thought he really likes this. So for Christmas, we got an Amstrad CPC 6128. I would have been maybe 10 years old. And I played all the games on the under the sun in it, but not so many role playing games because there weren't very many. The
Yeah.
Bard's Tale was the only one I played, and then I went round to a friend's and I saw him playing Dungeon Master, this wonderful game from FTL
That's a
on his
great
Atari
cover.
ST. It
Yeah.
is. And I absolutely had to have it. So this would be probably late 1988. I would have seen William playing it on his Atari ST, and I got it, and it is the game that sold loads of Atari STs. An incredibly popular game.
Mm.
It did come out for the Amiga about a year and a half later, which means that it doesn't matter now which platform you want to play it on. You can play it on the Amiga, you can play it on the PC as well. But for a while, you had to have an ST for it, and that's why people bought it. It's absolutely fantastic. It's not as cynical now as other RPGs where there's too much pointless fighting. There's still plenty of combat, but nothing like the levels of Lands of Lore, the Gold Box series, which came later. It had a modest amount of environmental storytelling, which I love in games. Things that get you thinking.
Mm.
It had enough prompts to get my imagination filling in the gaps, certainly. And I think it still stands up now. It's an absolutely wonderful game. One of the best games ever made.
How much time do you reckon you've poured into it?
Ooh, must have put in hundreds of hours because I must have played it through a dozen times. And it
Why do
takes,
you why do you play it again? What do you get from it? When was the last time you played it, and what do you get from it each time you play through?
so I haven't played it now for maybe a year and a half.
I thought you were going to say about 10 years.
No, 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 a
Okay.
year and a half. And it doesn't take me too long now to play it.
Right.
I don't even finish it every time now. I get to the point where I could finish it. Um, it's partly the familiarity. It's partly doing it better.
Yeah.
It's getting sometimes I'll say let's just go to finish it as quick as possible. Not quite speed running because it's not I'm not up to that skill level. I just love it. I just absolutely love it. Memories, nostalgia. It's still a good game though.
Um, I've never. I went through a thing when I first got a PC. I got a PC late. I mean, when did I get it? I got it. I was living with Mackenzie Crook, and we had TV money, and he bought one in, I guess, '99. and he bought it from Time. Remember Time
Yes, I
computers?
remember Time. Yeah.
They, they were terrible. They were on Watchdog. Anyway, and then I would have got one probably about 2000, and I sunk a lot of time into EverQuest.
Mm.
But I would just go and troll people.
Hmm.
You would have hated me on EverQuest. And I enjoyed it. I could never quite get as involved as a lot of other people were.
Mm.
What was I missing in games like Dungeon Master, in these role-playing games? What
So,
was I not getting?
so EverQuest didn't respect your time like
Right.
Dungeon Master did. Dungeon
Okay.
Master, you could play Dungeon Master, and maybe in the space of, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours, you could finish Dungeon Master, and that would be something you could say, I played and finished Dungeon Master. Delighted that I did it. Whereas EverQuest, I mean, by its name, was
Yeah.
designed to go on forever. I didn't play EverQuest. I didn't play Ultimate Online. I did play Muds, though. Did you ever hear of a Mud?
Multi-user dungeon, but I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure what that is.
It's a text adventure for multiple players with
Right.
role-playing stats.
And
And
you're all in it at the same time.
yes.
How does that work with a text adventure?
So you look and you can see what's in the room, and you'll get updates like an orc attacks you,
Right.
or whatever happens in the room. EverQuest is to some extent just a mud with a graphical skin on top, so you can
Okay.
see what's happening. So
Yeah.
that it's like a text representation of what's happening in EverQuest.
So hang on, in a mud, it will say, Dave, you are in a cavern. Ian has just walked in.
On the mud I'm thinking of just now, Duris, which is a very ruthless PvP mud, I might see Ian, a human called Ian, comes in, for example.
Wow.
Or if we're on the opposite side, I would just see an orc comes in.
And then you try and batter me.
Yes.
And I
Or
would.
run away because you. Why
Um,
would an orc be coming in? Is he the first person, and another 20 going to come in after you?
I want to get. I haven't streamed for a while, and I have streamed a few retro games, and I want to stream text adventures. I was terrible at them as a kid,
Hmm.
but when you're 9 years old and you've got three cassettes, and one of them is a text
Hmm.
adventure called Madness and the Minotaur, you'd play it. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of keen to imagine that that's going to be popular streaming text adventures. We're both fans of, and now I've completely forgotten it, the text adventure podcast, and I cannot
Oh,
remember.
the adventure podcast thing.
Is that what it's called? I think
I'm fairly certain it's not called the Adventure Podcast thing.
I'm looking.
The
The
Retro
Retro
Adventurers.
Adventurers. That's it.
There we are.
There's another one, Killed by a Group. They've been away for a year. They've just come back. But the Retro Adventurers, I love it, man.
Yes.
And there's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
super nerdy, I think, about text adventures. But I think they're the forgotten genre in retro gaming.
Yeah. Yeah. Text adventures are great, but they're not quite as accessible as they could be. You can't go on YouTube and see a few minutes of gameplay of one. I mean, how would that work?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's why, and same with strategy games as well. When people cover retro games, they reach for the quick ones to show, and it ends up disproportionately showing those ones, not text adventures.
Yeah.
I've got loads of text adventures here to play. But yeah, the problem with it is you don't know if you're stuck with the parser or doing the wrong thing. Sometimes they can be a bit unforgiving. I think doing it on Twitch could be a good thing because you could get hints from people
Yeah.
that aren't total out and out spoilers. People could say, no, keep trying that, Ian. You're doing the right thing. You're just
Yeah.
not typing in the right way. Or they might say, no, Ian, no, try something else. Or
And
what about?
I think
Yeah.
that will be part of it.
Yeah.
I don't get many viewers for my gaming streams. I get even less for this, but it's that sense of community of people chipping in and helping out. Have you noticed a rise? The numbers of people into retro gaming, and I guess you have stats for the podcast, but elsewhere as well. Have you noticed it be getting bigger and bigger recently?
No, it got bigger and bigger year by year until the pandemic.
Right.
And then after the pandemic, it kind of flatlined for a while.
Right.
And maybe now it started to pick up again. But it has struggled a bit after the pandemic because so many people got into it suddenly. And then
Right.
people tend to come into this for a few years and then drift away. and so many people come in at once, and then of course naturally they
Yeah.
drift away, and they'll come back.
Yeah.
But
It,
if you
it,
look at the comments on a show, Amigos, for example, if you look at the comments there, the people involved, it changes over time and people just drift away and fade out and
yeah.
other people come in and then they might come back again, but they can into it for a few years and then they'll get into something else instead.
I think it's helped by things like the Spectrum. This is
Yes.
most, I'm sure
Wonderful thing.
people listening will possibly know it's a recreation of the ZX Spectrum, preloaded with a load of games. You can shove a USB into the side with 5,000 games if you want.
Yeah.
So things like that. I was at a gaming event recently, and they must have had about 60 piled up. I walked past it an hour later, and most of them were
Yeah.
gone. So things like that, I think, encourage people into it. But for a lot of people, it will be they'll have a weekend playing the Spectrum and go, oh, that was nice memories. And then it goes in a cupboard or it goes in the shelf. A smaller percentage will be persuaded to dig a little
Yeah.
bit deeper into it all.
And that's fine. I mean, if someone buys it at the price it is and they get a weekend out of it or a few weekends out of it, or they maybe go back in 5 years' time and do it again, that's fine. It's fine for what it is. It's not as if Spectrum games have an infinite amount of depth to them, so they get a weekend of nostalgia out of it, and that's great. It's a great device, though. It's really well made, and it solves a lot of the problems. You've talked about this yourself. The problem in getting the input into it, the output from it,
Yeah.
the power supply and all the rest of it, it solves all that. You plug it in and it works. You get a carousel of games to choose from, and you're in the game just like it was.
It's a pack. I bought a BBC, a modded BBC, and I got a modded Dragon, and they're lovely to have, but they're in the loft because I had them set up and they were such a faff and they were so, and I can play all of those games by either on my Mister or just by logging into a website. I type in a game and I'm playing it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So you have got a lot of the hardware though, haven't you? You have
Oh
got a lot of
yes.
machines.
Yeah, I have. I have almost all of them. And there's nothing better than touching the real keyboard.
Yeah.
But you need to have it set up, ready to go, with a power supply, with access to the media on a disk or flash storage, and a screen to watch it on. I've got loads of CRTs for that purpose. If you don't have that, you're absolutely never going to say, I fancy playing some Repton, let's go to the cupboard and get the BBC out. Well, you won't do it.
No, it's funny you mentioned my boys got into Repton because I downloaded it on my phone and they loved Repton. They love Chucky Egg and Donkey Kong. And it's so much fun. We go to can't remember, it's called Pixel Arcade in Milton Keynes. One of those you pay a fee and you go in and play. And my 15-year-old boy goes straight to Donkey Kong and absolutely loves it. And my 13-year-old will kind of wander around and be a bit more, have a go on this, have a go on that. And you know, they love Fortnite, they love Call of Duty. Overwatch is big again at the moment, but it's a real buzz seeing them play Chucky Egg, a game that was so important to me as a kid.
Chucky Egg, you can play Chucky Egg and you can get 5 minutes out of it, and that's a big 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas Fortnite, you're not even in the game yet.
I was playing I don't know if you're into Squid Game, but Call of Duty is just there's a Squid Game mode and you play red light, green light. I thought I'll have a go at that. It took me 6 minutes to get into a game and I was dead within 30 seconds. I moved and I did that a few times. I went, oh, okay, I've done that now. But you're right, Chucky Egg. I used to be able to get round three times.
Even Repton, I love the character in Repton.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of character, just that little sprite. But Repton, you could be in, assuming you don't have to pull the BBC micro out the cupboard.
Yeah,
assuming you don't have to do that, you could be playing Repton and you could be playing the game and completed the first level within a couple of minutes while Fortnite's still loading.
Yeah, such a good game. Very quickly, we're coming to the end. Did you say you used to play Sim on the BBC? The one with the jetpack?
Yes. And the horrible music.
It
took me ages to find out what that game was. And I would say to people, there's a game I can't remember on the BBC Micro. And I would start describing it and they say Exile. No, it's not Exile. It's Exile. It's not Exile. It's not Exile. And it took me ages to find it. And it's Sim.
No one else. You're the only other person I know that's played it. No, I wrote an article about Retro Gamer for it. No one had heard of it. I got in touch with the guy that wrote it. I think his name was Julian. His sister wrote the annoying music, which I
Hmm.
love.
Hmm.
And he, at the end, I think, oh, hang on a minute, Dave. It's the Amazon delivery guy. This is exciting. Oh, mate, thank you. Whoa, we're keeping that in. Let me put my headphones in. We're going to keep that in.
Next
I'll
thing
hear
you'll
you
be
in a
starting
second.
to
Hang on.
cook your potatoes.
And I think he'd done that thing of on the end screen because it was so difficult. I think it was impossible on the Electron. I think there
Hmm.
was a bug. He put his phone number on it,
Oh,
thinking, well, no one's going to do this, and he did get quite a lot of phone calls there. That's a tough old game, even with infinite lives. Have you gone back and played it recently?
no, no, it's only in the past few months I've discovered what it was,
Oh wow,
because
okay,
there was a game for the Amstrad that the name has slipped out my head again. But I've got the tape here somewhere. I went and bought the tape. There was a game for the Amstrad and there was a game for the BBC. I couldn't remember the names of the games, but they were burned into my memory, the actual gameplay. I know they're not particularly good games, but that
yeah.
doesn't matter.
I'm so pleased you mentioned Sim. I think in an earlier episode I did a show. I think I might have taken Sim might have been my game. It's very strange to hear someone mention it. We're coming to the end. I like to keep these tight.
Mhm.
Anything else about Dungeon Master you want to share with us that perhaps we didn't mention?
It has aged well enough to go back and play. I talk about Ultimate all the time,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure how approachable Ultimate is for someone who's not played it. Dungeon Master, I think, would be approachable for someone to play. Go and give it a shot.
What have you got to plug? The This Week in Retro is a fabulous, fabulous podcast. I'm lucky to have been on it a couple of. I always get a little bit nervous when I come on because I love it so much and I want to get it right. And I'm aware that I'm with people that know
Really?
way more than me. Oh yeah, I get
Really?
nervous. Yeah, yeah, totally. I love
Ian
it.
Lee nervous to come on my little podcast.
I genuinely, I'm not joking. I am because it's such a good show. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to sully it with my nonsense.
You certainly
Honestly,
haven't. You're a great
anytime.
you're a great guest on it. People love
Ah,
having you on. We do try and keep it nice. We try and keep it positive. We try and
yeah,
keep it forward looking. We've recorded an episode this morning. We talk about tomorrow's world and how positive and forward looking that was.
yeah.
And I think that's missing these days in media. So I don't want to be part of something else that's just cynically bashing things and saying, I'm too good for this. I've seen it all before.
Yeah.
We try to avoid that and keep it something as uplifting as we can be, with while still being honest.
Your passion and love for the whole thing, the whole retro, whatever that means, and vintage. I know there's some, discussion about the
Don't
difference.
gatekeep.
No,
Don't gatekeep.
exactly. Don't gatekeep.
Mm.
That's it. And there are so many wonderful, generous YouTubers and podcasters. Reese always springs to mind. He's been so kind to me, and I think he's so good. And there are some, and I'm not going to mention any names because it's not fair, that ring fence it and they gatekeep it. And no, 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 no,
No.
no. This should be open to everyone.
Yeah. And retro is more accessible now than it ever has been. It's easy to do it now. 10 years ago, it was difficult. You
Yeah.
couldn't do all the things you could do now. Now it's not just easy on your computer, it's easy to have the Mr. device you have to go into a shop and lift something off a shelf and buy it and take it home
Yeah.
and play it. It's so easy now. Yeah, anything's valid. Just enjoy yourself.
The podcast is This Week in Retro.
Yep.
I'm guessing is that the YouTube channel as well? Because I know there's
Yes.
RMC Retro, which is separate. So This Week in Retro is the YouTube
Yes. Yes.
channel to go to as well. There is give the Patreon a plug, Dave.
Yeah.
Have I put you on the spot now?
No, it's www.patreon. You don't need the www, Dave. I keep saying the www. You don't need it, Dave. You haven't needed it for about 10 years, 15 years. I don't know how long you haven't needed it for. Patreon.com/This Week in Retro if you'd like. Why would you sign up to someone's Patreon if you don't know what the podcast is? Go and listen to the podcast first, at least.
You remind
Maybe
me.
you'll hate it.
A few years ago, I was doing a breakfast show, and this old boy phoned in, and he was promoting a charity. He said, "Can I put out the website?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can." He said, "Right, HT," and he did it really slowly. And me and the producer were absolutely wetting ourselves, and it got to the end, and I went, Could you repeat that for anyone that
Come on,
missed?
Ian.
I love it. Dave, it's so lovely to talk to you. And I hope we have many more conversations. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me on.